to imagine your happiest place or most restful place is extremely important, especially during a time like this. So that's just a small activity that you can do, just to kind of place yourself in a restful place or in a restful mindset so that you can maneuver throughout your day. You can start off your mornings with that or end your day with it, or if you need to take a quick break, that's something that you can do. All right. So today I wanted to start off with that just because of the heaviness of the conversation. I will be talking about opportunities for interns, looking at some of the trauma responses that you may be experiencing, as well as self-care during this time in a virtual office. Okay, yes, it's fine that the session is being recorded. All right, so from there, I want us to kind of jump in to what a trauma response is. So this is taken from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, where it informs us that trauma is a single event, multiple events, or a set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as physically and emotionally harmful or threatening, and that has lasting effects on the individual's physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. All right. And I'd like to posit that what we're experiencing during this COVID-19 time is definitely a traumatic response, right? So it's associated, and this is the definition up here for what we're experiencing during COVID-19. Our body is responding to it as a trauma response. So there's increased uncertainty during this time and stress, and we're under acute stress, and we may be more likely to be operating from a mode of survival because our brains are responding to it as trauma. So that means that we're thinking of things more black and white and very concrete. There's really no room for anything in between during this time because we're operating out of a mode of survival. So not only is it a physical or emotional response, it's also a physiological response because your brain is responding. Okay, so we're now more focused on the immediate here and now and not really able to plan ahead or think about what are some of the options for in the future because our main focus is on right now. All right, so we're having difficulty regulating our emotions, or we may become less able to make decisions and the stressful times are associated with threats to our safety and a loss of power of control. All right, so that's something that I want you all to think about as you navigate your own experience, but also in working with the students that you're providing services for as well. Knowing that our brains are more developed than theirs, our responses are going to be a little bit more developed. But when you think about it in terms of trauma, we're reacting out of a sense that we're in danger, okay? All right, so types of trauma: natural disasters, physical, sexual, and psychological, family violence, community violence, grief and loss, refugee experiences, military families, substance abuse or dependency. Those are all examples of what trauma could potentially be. And when we think about COVID-19, it may not be a hurricane or an earthquake, right? But it is pretty much a natural disaster because of how it's so widespread. All right. So thinking about this in terms of opportunities that you can create for yourself as an intern, definitely assisting with the weekly check-ins for students. So I know that you may have your own particular caseload, but when you think about it as a school counselor or as stepping into the guidance counselor role, I know that the ministry is in the process of hiring school counselors as well. But just thinking about it, you are there to serve all students, not just the ones on your caseload, right? So this would be a great time to connect or check in with those that are not frequent flyers, right? The ones that were not stopping by the counselor suite as often, all right? So this will be your opportunity to connect with some of those students as well and potentially earn additional hours. All right, assist with meal delivery. I know that this may not be one that folks would like to take advantage of, an opportunity that you would like to take advantage of, but it does present a way for you to connect with some of the families, especially families from low income situations that may be experiencing not having some of their basic needs met, whether it may be electricity or Wi-Fi, technology challenges, and that will be a way for you to connect with them, practicing social distancing, of course. Providing some additional hours. You could watch webinars and also attend trainings online, but also co-facilitate those workshops, right? So talk with your counselor or the guidance counselor that you're working with to think about what are some of the workshops that you all could co-facilitate with each other and provide some of those resources to students. And then organizing the counseling data at your site. So yes, the counselors and you yourself are collecting these hours, but thinking about what are the types of cases that you are working on in particular, okay? From there, you could do needs assessments and strengths assessments. So this would be a great time for you all to really see what the students need during this time, or what you all are excelling in terms of the counseling department. So ways that you can collaborate with the counselor to put together on a Google form. Maybe it could be something brief that you ask the students to fill out, indicating their form levels. And it doesn't have to be the specific information if you don't want it to be, right? It all depends on what you all are trying to gather from this. So maybe you see that there's a need in a particular year level, maybe there's a need in a particular form. So there's certain information that you could gather just to see where you all need to improve or what services the students need from you all at this time. So it's okay for us to have in mind what we may want to serve them with, but at the same time, they're able to acknowledge what their needs are, all right? So one thing that I was going to say, and this could be a way that admin could provide that support for you all, and this is really out of your control as an intern, but if we think about if the ministry were to, if you were walking into a situation where you are at the end of your program, but still needing to complete a few hours, I'm not quite sure if they're going to offer provisional titles for you all, where you can still work or operate in the capacity of a school counselor, but just complete give you additional time to complete the hours for your master's degree, all right? And then some additional opportunities would be creating small groups for the students, and I know Dr. Maynard will get into some details on that, but just some examples of small groups would be one on dialectical behavior therapy, where there's this focus on mindfulness and emotion regulation, looking at career readiness, right, helping students with mock interviews or resume prep. How should they send emails, right? What are some of the ways that they should be communicating professionally? So helping them with those kinds of skills, providing them study skills for major exams. I know that some of the exams are going to be switching to multiple choice, so providing some support in that area, and also grief and loss, seeing what the students need around that, since there's so much loss during this time. Organizing guest lectures, where you have some of the alumni come in and speak, or do virtual workshops such as this, where they talk about their career paths and what steps they took throughout their career once they left secondary school, right? So did they go study abroad? Did they go to UE? Are they medical doctors? Did they go on for their doctorate? Those are different things. That they become an entrepreneur, and get a wealth of experiences there and presentations for the students to just chime in if they would like to, okay? Thinking about classroom observations. So when you look around, I know some of you may have your cameras on still, being able to do classroom observations of the students when they're meeting in their regular classes. being able to just check in with them so you can see how they may be engaging. Are they connected with what's going on? And you can see all of that in the virtual conversations or in those meetings. So the same way you may go in and do observations in a regular school setting, trying to translate that to online. And if you were to do that, popping in for small guest presentations to the classes as well. So you could go in and talk about academic support, social, emotional. At this time, you really just want to be a beacon of hope for the students that you are working with, and also for the families, right? So fostering that community online and creating opportunities or small competitions. There's a school in DC that's using like different competitions between the classes and also the grade levels. Out there, you all call it year levels, but different competitions between the different grade levels. All right, so that could be something that you initiate as a counseling intern, and then looking to celebrate the students as well. So what are some of the accomplishments the students are still making during this time? Maybe putting together a short newsletter that really highlights their work. Okay. And then also managing yourself during this time. So what are some ways that you're caring for yourself and also looking to set up your virtual office? So making sure that your notes are as up to date as possible, and indicating the types of cases, because again, you should be very aware of the data. This is where we fall short as school counselors. We have access to so much data and we do not use it to really advance the profession and also promote the type of work that you are doing. A lot of times when education is mentioned, and especially when it comes to budget cuts, school counselors are typically the first to go, but it's because we're not utilizing the data to really show how the school counseling program is impacting the students and the families that we're providing services for. Okay, so thinking about ways that you can begin to collect that data, documenting your hours. I'm not sure if you all have a particular log sheet that you use, but creating maybe a Google sheet for yourself where you have access to it and your supervisor has access to it, so they're very aware of where you are with your hours and what you would need. Okay. Have office hours for yourself. So say you work with the counselor to set up a schedule. Maybe they have office hours from 9 to 12, and then you pick up from 12 to 2, right, with manning the office hours during that time, where the students can just drop in, ask you a question on Google Meet or on Zoom. I know that they're using Google Meet in Barbados, and maybe not necessarily Zoom as much, but opportunities for the students and families to pop in and have you. Okay. Is that my 5-minute marker? I'm ending soon. This is one of my last slides. Okay, so I'll continue. Unless you had a question, Dr. Maynard.
No, I'm sorry. That was a real accident. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. I'm like, I know I'm speeding it up. Okay, so taking a break as much as possible. So yes, you have your set office hours and setting some clear boundaries for yourself, but also taking a break throughout your work schedule as well, and then monitoring your own behaviors. Are you still eating and sleeping and getting some exercise in? Are you waking up in the middle of the night? And remember, your body may be responding to this as a trauma response, right? So just knowing that you may be responding involuntarily as well, but paying attention to that so that way you can get back to managing your own stress levels, or making sure that you're eating properly and not putting on some quarantine pounds in the process, okay? Socializing, but also keeping social distancing in mind. So there's a lot of opportunities online to connect with folks using apps like Hangout or Zoom or Google Meet to set up times to meet with friends or with family as well. For me, I run a writing group with Black women PhDs, and we meet on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays to write for about 2 hours. And sometimes we'll have guest speakers come in. And then on Saturdays, bi-weekly, we'll get together to just chat, right, and have conversation and dialogue, where we put the books aside, we're not writing at all, and we're just sitting there having some healthy conversation. All right, so thinking about that. So in our conversation a couple days ago, speaking with Dr. Maynard, we spoke about crop over, and I was supposed to be coming out there for the Crop Over Festival later on this year, which has been canceled. But a song that I do love is Push and Go Through. So I was planning to bring a group of Black women PhDs. So it's actually turned into a small business, providing support for Black women as we go on our own doctoral journeys and collect doctorate degrees. So some of the challenges that go along with that process, but also featuring them and making sure that they feel like their work is being highlighted in various spaces, since sometimes we are often overlooked. So I was working with the Barbados Tourism and Marketing Inc. to create a package that we went out, promoted and everything, got folks on board. We were planning to come out there for the festival, and then it was canceled. So a song that I do like is Push and Go Through. So I want you all to hold on to that, be kind to yourself, practice self-compassion. And some of the lyrics I have down here, it says, I've never seen so much obstacles before. I got to pray some more. And then the song goes on to say, my journey will never go in vain. That's why I gotta push. You gotta push and go through. So I want to leave you all with that. And I'll present, let me just present the slide to you all, because there's some cool graphics on it that I wanted you all to see. So hopefully you can see it. So thank you. Remember, I know you all mentioned that some of your favorite places consist of being close to the water. So I want to thank you for this time. Remember to continue to just push. We're going to get through this together and do what you need to do to be well. Okay. And my contact information is there, and I can drop my information in the chat box as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Griffin, for that wonderful presentation. I'm sure the rest join me in saying thank you for sharing those valuable tips and ways of which we can still engage in our role as school counselors and as counselors in training. I do see two questions, so I want to jump to them. I see Sherry-Ann Isaacs. I will let her go first. If you just press you can just press your space bar, I believe, to unmute and hold it down while you ask the question. Sherry-Ann, you there? Okay, I'll move on to Deslyn Bell-Watson. Deslyn? I'm seeing the hand wave. Do you have a question?
I saw Sasha Gay had a question, and then someone, okay. Yeah, but she put her hand down.
Dr. Maiden, they were not questions, they were just applauds.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, let me teach you something. At the bottom of your screen, there is a smiley face to the right. It says reactions. If you click that, you'll get the applause. It looks like that, if you look on my screen. Okay, yes. Okay. I hope you're appreciating your applause.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And I was
thank you very much
in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving of your time.
Of course.
As you know, I don't know if you're going back to bed or not, but we're going to push on, as you've advised, to my session. Now, I'm just asking everyone to be very patient with me, because I am, still learning the technology as I go along. So I now want to share my presentation. So let me see if I can do this. Yes, here I go. No, there I go. All right. Share. All right. I'm not as savvy. You will see me intermittently, and I'm not as savvy as Dr. Griffin in terms of keeping up with questions and so forth. So I really will have to hold the questions to the end, and I will try to, I will come in and out in between so that you don't forget it's me. Okay. Oh, I do stay on. Oh, great. That is wonderful. Okay. Here I go. All right. So I'm going to start with just give you an overview of what I plan to go through in the next, hopefully no more than 30 minutes, which is we're going to look at the current context and definitions of online counseling, the different types of modalities that are used for online counseling, the benefits, limitations, and ethics, tailoring your online or your counseling to your face-to-face counseling to the online setting for the student, as well as looking at working with groups online, okay, and some of the benefits and best practices, as well as some of the ethical considerations that we need to think about. All right, so we'll start by looking at the current context. Dr. Griffin quite nicely framed what we're experiencing at the moment with COVID-19 and the trauma that some of us are experiencing, the anxiety and so forth. So as we all know, the novel coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic has forced schools around the world to shift from face-to-face forms of instruction to online teaching and learning. In a similar fashion, school counselors are also being forced to shift to embrace online counseling at a time when we're physically distancing to prevent the spread of COVID-19, okay? So the traditional face-to-face meeting of counselor and student that we're accustomed to, that we engage with the student to discuss personal, social, and career or academic concerns during counseling sessions has to actually be replaced with technology alternatives, okay? So, here I go. So first of all, we have to ask ourselves, what is online counseling? And it's really an alternative to the traditional form, which is the face-to-face counseling. Counseling services are provided through the use of electronic media and internet to provide services to clients. Our clients are our students in their homes. And these services are mainly offered via email, real-time chat, and video conferencing, using platforms such as Facebook, Zoom that we're using, Skype, even WhatsApp, okay? In the literature, online counseling includes communication via emails, as well as text messaging. However, my focus today will be on what we call synchronous technologies that allow for real-time counseling in the same way that we're here in real-time interacting. So it allows for real-time counseling with the individual student and students in group counseling. Online counseling is also referred to as e-counseling, distance counseling, internet counseling, and even web counseling. So you'll hear different terms used. Okay, so the second objective is to really look at the different types of online communications that there are, the benefits and limitations of using them in online counseling, and some of the ethical considerations. You know, why should we even venture into online counseling? Yes, we know that we're being forced into it a little bit, maybe even a little bit prematurely because of the COVID-19 situation, but young people are increasingly comfortable with video conferencing tools. Many frequently use technology, and counselors and students can use a mobile phone or a laptop or a desktop computer and talk in a room where they feel comfortable and know that they will not be overheard. So there's that comfort level that's involved for the client, which is a good thing, okay? In terms of the advantages of online counseling, the effectiveness of this form of counseling in comparison with traditional forms of counseling are as follows. Online counseling is easily accessible to all students who have access to a device and Wi-Fi. It's very flexible and convenient as it gives an opportunity to both the counselor and the student to have the counseling session according to their preferred time, which is also important in these times when everybody's at home and we're competing for maybe use of devices and use of quiet private spaces within the home. Online counseling also allows more comfort and privacy as there's no need for the student to visit the counselor's office. Hence, it helps to eliminate some of that social stigma that's associated with receiving counseling in our context still. Some of you may have already been using electronic media or text messaging to provide services to students outside of the classroom, even when we were in the face-to-face context. And these forms of communication are known as synchronous communication, okay? So one of the main differences between asynchronous communication and synchronous communication is that with asynchronous communication, we expect there to be a time delay. You send me an email, you don't expect that I'm instantly going to respond to that email. You know that there's some kind of time lag. This time delay is a natural outcome of asynchronous communication, although it can result from technological failure, because we do acknowledge that it's possible to send an email or send a text, and it does from time to time get lost out there in cyberspace, okay? Or maybe it just gets lost in the person's, the recipient's own mailbox in terms of they have so much, or it goes to the junk mail or quarantine. So we have all of those issues as well. However, we must be mindful as school counselors that time delay may cause uncertainty, leading the student to question and doubt him or herself, and it may actually instigate a degree of frustration within the student if they don't receive a response within a reasonable time frame. Best practice from the literature seems to suggest that a time frame of at least 48 hours of responding to asynchronous communications is important for the school counsellor to acknowledge and try to respond as quickly as possible, up to 48 hours after they've received the original message. With regards to time delay that is caused by technological failure, such delay could interfere with school counselling services and result in the students subsequently experiencing feelings of isolation and alienation about being cut off with no means of reconnection. So it's very important that if you are communicating with a student using email or using text messaging, that you do have access to a phone number. So if you yourself don't receive a response from that student within a particular time frame, maybe the same 48 hours, you can follow up with a phone call to check that it really was received, okay? Now, synchronous technologies, which is at the other end of the spectrum, they include things like audio conferencing and video conferencing. So as I said to you, we're using a synchronous technology right now with Zoom. There's also Facebook Messenger and Google Meet and a host of others that are out there, that some of them are free, some of them you have to pay for. They allow for both real-time audio and video interactions. Our focus today is going to be very much on this video conferencing, which is a synchronous communication and affords us the opportunity to experience the closest interaction with students to what we're accustomed to, which is the actual face-to-face counselling, without being in the actual physical presence of each other. Okay, so we're going to focus on some benefits now of counselling that the literature has brought up for us from research. I would say from research over the past 15 to 16 years. Okay, so the benefits of online counselling from all that has been found to date is that they actually outweigh the risks that are involved with online counselling. Okay, so first and foremost, online counselling is convenient and it allows for a high degree of flexibility, especially as it pertains to scheduling of appointments and not having to be confined to a specific location, as I mentioned before. It's been found that children disclose higher levels of personal information sooner on a computer than face-to-face. And if you're familiar with research that relates to social media and young people, you will know that this is very true, that they're much more trusting within the online environment. Sula in 2011 refers to this as the disinhibition effect and states that the potential benefits of this is that it can mean that the length of rapport building when you're establishing that relationship at the beginning of counselling may actually be reduced within the online context. Now, counsellors have reported that they feel more focused and their responses are more powerful because they have more time to reflect within the online environment. Okay, and much research supports the view that online counselling is at least equal to face-to-face counselling. So this is all speaking very good and it's very positive as it relates to the use of online counselling, our shift from the face-to-face to online counselling. Okay, in terms of limitations, one of the major limitations that we're always concerned about is security and privacy. They're definitely called into question in the online environment. There are a number of threats which include, for example, computer viruses, hackers, damage or even theft of your devices, inadequate security systems or software, unsecured electronic files. I'm trying to think. There are a host of ways in which you can lose information on your computer or even lose your device itself. You need to do your very best to understand the technology that you're using, including any necessary security measures. Make sure that you use robust passwords. You know, don't use your name or your middle name, your date of birth. You need to use passwords that integrate both numbers and symbols and make it as difficult as possible for someone to be able to break into your device. Well, if you're familiar with data encryption, it's also good to use encryption because that helps to protect your information, and any other similar security measures. Now, take care with your use of social media and be aware that even your search history is a potential security risk. Okay, so you have to be very cognizant of that. In terms of technical problems, those are associated with video conferencing include issues with connection speed, poor picture or sound quality. Occasionally video conferencing may just intermittently cease to work. So as I would have told you at the beginning of the session, that if all of a sudden we cut out, make sure you just go back and hit the link. There's always the chance that that may happen, or you know, we may have a power cut. Okay, so these all lead to disruptions in the counseling session. So you have to be very cognizant of technical problems as being a limitation, as well as non-verbal cues. And we know this, yes, we're here live and we can see each other and we can look at each other. You can tell a lot from facial expressions and vocal signals, but body language is also very important. And as we are at the moment, you can't see my body. You don't know if I'm all tied up, tense down below, or if I'm relaxed, or, you know, it's very difficult to read the non-verbal cues through this medium. Body language in itself can often be quite telling and help to provide a clearer picture of the client's thoughts, moods, and behaviors. Even though video conferencing provides a real-time picture of the client, non-verbal cues can be misunderstood or missed altogether. Okay? And finally, lack of response to crisis situations. Now remember, you're physically distant from the client. Therefore, it's difficult to respond quickly and effectively when a crisis happens. For example, if a client has suffered a personal tragedy, it may be difficult, even impossible, for you to provide direct assistance. So we have to be mindful of that. In terms of ethical considerations, number one, of course, is informed consent. In school counseling, it's very important that we do get informed consent. We're working with minors. Now, I know within our cultural context, we tend to rely on the, what do we call it, in locus parentis. You'll pronounce it much better than me in terms of the principal, you know, has kind of oversight of responsibility of the parent for the students. But in our current setting, really and truly, we do need to interface with the parents a bit more and not rely on that, because we are going into people's homes when we're interacting with the students. Okay, so we need to inform consent is critical. The best practice is that you obtain parental consent for individual and group counseling. I would have sent to you prior, maybe yesterday, I think, or the day before, some links. And one of them would have been to a sample or an example of a school counseling informed consent, which I put into a Google form doc, and the parent can click yes or no as to whether they consent or not. Now, there are even some issues with that, okay? So for instance, there's no guarantee that it's the parent that will consent, that will click yes. The best that we can do is probably get the parent's email address and make sure that that consent form goes to the parent's email address and is returned from the parent's email address. But even then, there's still no guarantee. But you know what? It's still better than nothing. And we have to become, you know, very, I suppose, flexible and enterprising within this context and try and make it work as best as possible. But by practicing, by making sure you practice distributing that consent, letting the parent read through it, and maybe if you have a phone number as well, you can follow up with a phone call just to make sure they understand what it is that their child will be engaging in for the next 2 or 3 weeks or 30 minutes, whatever it may be, okay? Practitioner competence. Now, of course, it goes without saying that you have to have experience of face-to-face counseling and access to supervision. Those two things are very important, essential. Okay, so make sure that you orient your student, when you're your client, to the online platform that you're using prior to engaging in counseling. And it's fine to let the student know, look, I'm new to this method of counseling in terms of using the computer. So if I drop out, you know, tell them what to do if this happens. So talk them through it. And if you have any questions, make sure that you contact your supervisor and really, you know, get the guidance that you may need, okay? Basic competence includes having alternative ways of providing services for communicating with clients promptly if the primary method of communication fails. So for instance, if the computer does cut out, if your computer dies, if it crashes altogether, you aren't just to leave your client hanging. You need to be able to contact them by phone, explain what's happened, and set up a continuity plan, okay? Personal use of media by practitioners. Now, boundaries, and I kind of alluded to it a little earlier, boundaries exist between your personal and professional activities, okay? And in our face-to-face situation, they exist, yeah? So online, it becomes even more important as when we're working in the face-to-face environment. It's recommended that school counselors maintain a clear distinction between their personal and professional online presence. All school counseling inquiries and contacts are best directed to a professional site if possible. If the school has a site or they're using Google Classrooms and there's a free announcement site or something, it's best to try and channel everything as much as possible through that site. All school counseling inquiries and contacts, if you're using, I would recommend that if you have no choice but to use a personal email address, that you actually set up a new one. And even if you use your name and put SC in training or SC at the end of it, or GC or something, but to distinguish it from your personal email address is very important. Okay, so you should need to exercise care and consistency as it relates to your personal site in order to ensure that appropriate personal and professional boundaries are maintained. And consider carefully how you respond to friend requests on social media, because it's very, especially for teenage children, they may feel more familiar with you now that they're communicating online and so forth, and they may go into Instagram or whatever it is and issue a friend request. You have to be very careful with that. Social media sites cannot guarantee any level of confidentiality or privacy and cannot fully remove material retrospectively. Once you put something up, it really is up there. It's quite difficult to get it down, okay? Good practice suggests that practitioners exercise their rights to use social media for personal communications and relationships online in ways that will neither compromise the work with their students nor bring the profession into disrepute. All right, so you need to be careful. So the third objective, we're really going to look at how to kind of tailor your online counseling to student delivery, some of the things that you need to be mindful of as we do this. And of course, the number one is the student safety challenges. All right, and I've put a little scenario down there to shake you up a little bit. And I'm actually going to take a little break and let's talk about that before I move on to the next slide. Okay, so let me see if I can do this. Oh, I think I can do it. Can I? No, I don't know how to bring chat up on my, all right. As I said, bear with me and I'm looking at the time. All right, so in the interest of time, Joshua is one of your online secondary school students, has been in turmoil academically and emotionally since his mother died 6 months ago. In an online session with you, Josh shares that he's thinking of using his grandfather's medication and ending it all. What do you do? And I would like to take two responses. Let me hear what you think as a school counselor you would do. I don't know how to go into the chat while I'm screen sharing, so I'm just gonna kind of risk it and hope that someone comes forward.
So I'll look at the chat for you. No one has commented in the chat yet.
Okay. So no one's gonna venture, no one's gonna try this?
Hi, Donna.
Hi.
Hi. I will attempt.
Say your name for me because I'm not sure.
Oh, sorry. This is Janice Jamet.
Okay. Hi, Janice. Yes, Janice.
Hi. Within the school setting, prior to counseling, you would have told the students about limits to confidentiality. And part of that would be if you're planning on harming yourself, obviously there's someone that you would have to inform somebody else. So since he is thinking of doing that, he obviously has means because he has access to his grandfather's medication. And we have contact information for the father, if there's a father or some adult. I would have to make contact to that individual immediately because I'm not present with him, he's not present with me. So there's nothing I can do within that moment. So it would be important to make contact with an adult who is in his presence somewhere and let them know what the student is considering.
Okay.
That's how I would handle that.
Oops. 1 minute. What have I done? Thank you very much, Janet. I'm doing something wrong. Sorry, I went to press something. 1 minute. Why is my... Okay, thank you very much, Janice. And yes, she is spot on. You have to have, and I would have emphasized earlier, it's important to have contact information of your clients so that you're able to act should any events like this arise. And,
Hello, Donna.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, this is Donna Tulcox here. I want to add to what Janice has said, especially at this time in the COVID-19. The other part of that too would also be being able to contact the COVID-19 hotline, where they've got psychiatrists there as well. And you may have to get someone over to that person's house as soon as possible, just to make sure that the medication is not only secure, maybe the father could secure the medication if that's in truth and if that was going on with the boy, but also it's an emergency situation. And in a normal situation, we would have put in the protocols that we would have to get that young man to see someone. In this case, with the curfew and the whole aspect of mobility, there is a facility where someone can actually get to his house. And I know it for sure because I've actually used it within this time frame. So that's that's the addition to what Janice has said.
Okay, thank you, Donna and Janice, and you're both correct. I'm just going to remind Donna that we are speaking across the Caribbean here. We have people from St. Kitts and St. Vincent and so forth. So you have to become familiar with what is available within your context as it relates to emergency services.
Yes, I'll just add, there were 2 comments from Sasha Gay. She said, contact the parent and child probation agency. And then Kim Jones said, if we check the suicide protocol, we can use it even online. Okay, so you're seeing that there will be slight variations depending upon where you are resident and working from. So good practice does require that counselors are clear from the outset of working with students about the boundaries between what is provided by their service directly and how any additional support will be sought in emergency situations, as Donna quite rightly pointed out. So what additional services will be provided in emergency situations with students and their family. And sometimes, you have to be able to act on your own initiative, not sometimes, most of the time. Online resources or guidance may be provided to assist students in finding appropriate emergency services. Additional responses could include providing a school or counselling department web page, asynchronous counselling resources, such as engaging with the parent and so forth online, as well as on the phone, and you use other methods. However, someone hit the nail on the head, which is that, you need to make sure, even if your school doesn't yet have protocols, you need to look at creating protocols for urgent student issues, especially within this online context. I have a few here in terms of outline of protocol, which can be a start for some of you. Okay, so a student safety challenges protocol. And it's elements of what you've mentioned already. Notify the parent or guardian, or in our case in Barbados, you might need to notify the childcare board. I heard someone say the probation office, but you also need to notify school administration of the crisis. So your principal does need to be notified within our context. Assist family with crisis intervention, for example, providing outside counselling referrals if they're needed. Submit a crisis report to the administration for documentation purposes. And finally, follow up with the student within 48 hours after the crisis. That follow-up care is important, okay? Okie doke.
organizing a counseling session with the student, how do we go about this? You arrange a session by email and or telephone in advance at a suitable time, okay? Orient the student and parent as to what to expect with regards to using video conferencing, the length of time of the session. Try to keep the session shorter than it would be probably if you did a face-to-face session. I think 20 minutes is a reasonable time for the average session with a child. I would say someone, especially 14 years or younger. In the case of counselors in training, if it's necessary for you to record a session, make sure that that's included in your consent form and you talk it through with the parent and the child and explain that it's being used for supervision of your practice and in your training as a school counsellor. Send the informed consent, which should be acknowledged as read and understood, even if you have to follow up. Ensure that you receive consent before proceeding. The morning of the meeting, send the link by email. I say the morning of the meeting because I find often that when you send it a few days beforehand or a week before, it can easily get forgotten. So I try my best to send emails with links twice, once when we initially set the date for the meeting, and then I would send it the day of the meeting, okay? And it's also a good idea to request a response to that email so that the person has read it and acknowledged that they're meeting with you at such and such a time, okay? So I suggested as a rule of thumb that you shouldn't send a link to your client no less than 2 hours before the meeting and no more than 48 hours prior to the meeting, okay? Outline the process. So you need to tell them what to expect, clear up any misunderstandings that may occur, and the turnaround time and safeguards that may be necessary, and what will occur in case of emergency procedures if it's a sensitive case and you think that you may have to act accordingly. Okay, just flicking back to, even though I said I'm not harping on asynchronous, I have to get myself correct with this asynchronous versus synchronous, but asynchronous methods of communication. When we're using email and text, because inevitably, even though we're using video conferencing in terms of preparing for the meeting and so forth, it will involve some emailing, and maybe even after the session with the client, if you have promised to send further information or follow up later by text, then you will be communicating with them in that way too. Now, the best way to approach text messaging is always to make the assumption that whatever you write, it can fall into anyone's hands or anybody can read it, okay? And it's very important that you are very clear in the writing of your email so that it cannot be misinterpreted. Anything you've said, even if taken out of context, it'd be hard to misinterpret it. So keep the message brief, professional, and to the point, okay? And I have an example here on the slide, as you can see. I don't think that there's much that you could take out of context there and be used in a detrimental way at all to the counsellor, all right? In terms of video conferencing and netiquette, there's some don'ts. They're basic don'ts, but they're things that we don't think of. And especially if you haven't been on TV shows or anything like that, you're not really familiar with these points. So I'm just kind of reinforcing them here for those of you who do have that experience. On the no-no list are clothes with stripes and busy patterns. So they do not translate well to video and they can be very distracting for the client, okay? Instead, go with solid neutral colors. Make sure that you don't multitask during the counseling session. Remember, when you're participating in a video conference, your actions are on full display all of the time, all right? So don't go looking down into your phone or reaching out for something, or as if you can help it. Try to stay focused on your client during that time. And that's another reason to reinforce having shorter sessions, because engaging in video conferencing meetings is very tiring and it does require a lot of focus. So to be able to sit in front of it for an hour is a challenge in itself. So try to keep them nice and concise. In terms of some practical considerations, be prepared. Okay, choose an appropriate confidential space for the counseling session in your home, a private quiet room free from distractions, such as your television or pets or other family members. In fact, eliminate all distractions. This means logging out of messaging apps, silencing your phone, and tuning out email alerts, as well as suspending social media notifications. I mean, these are things I literally spent this morning trying to do all of these things before I came on to speak with you all, because, you know, we have them and we take them for granted, and then you remember, oh, but I'm going to actually be in a session communicating with other people, and my Facebook notifications will be going ping, ping, ping. So no, it's not a good idea. Background noise or clutter can also be distracting. Many video conferencing platforms give you the option of blurring your background or adding a virtual background. And I'll show you how to do that a little bit later in Zoom. It's quite easy. And that way, you know, your home is not seen in any way. You've just got either a blurred vision or a completely different picture. Make sure your curtains are closed if it's sunny. If not, the camera will blast out from the background light and leave you looking like a shadow on the screen. And make sure, oh, you see, oh, there I am. That was one of my signals to tell me that I've gone over time. I can't believe it's 10:30 already. Sorry, I'll speed up a little more, okay? So yeah, so you want to be cognizant of the lights and where you're positioning yourself. Make sure that you familiarize yourself with the technology by testing it beforehand. So you can test Zoom with a friend or something, or if you're using Skype, whatever method you're using. When you start out, it's best to perform a dry run to check on things like lighting and your camera angle. You may have to raise your computer on some telephone directories to bring it up so that you're at eye level with the camera. Or if you're using your phone, you may have to do the same thing. Think about the audio quality, make sure that the person can hear you clearly, and any other factors that could create distractions for the student, you should take care of. Another good tip, especially when I come to the group counseling part, is to use earphones and a mic, if possible. If you don't have them, fair enough. But if you know that you're in a noisy background, like for instance, I really should have earphones because I'm near a main road. I'm not sure if you all are hearing the traffic pass. But unfortunately, I don't have earphones that fit into this computer. But ideally, earphones and the mic help to cancel out some of those distractions, okay? And they also help you to remain very present in the situation and focused, all right? I've nearly finished. Two more, I'm gonna whip through these two, so bear with me. So we've jumped now to online group counseling. We're gonna look at the benefits and best practices. Okay, so I'm sure many of you are concerned about how to conduct counseling with groups online. We have this kind of fixed image in our minds of a face-to-face setting with the chairs in a circle, and we now have to take that image that we have and place it onto a flat screen with real physical distance between each of us. Having had the first-hand experience of running a group in this way, I can assure you that it can indeed work. I myself was skeptical initially. I was thinking, how, I'm so used to a particular setting for group counseling, and now to kind of take it onto this platform, I wasn't confident that it would work, but rest assured from my experience, it does seem to work. Okay, so don't be afraid, and we will provide the necessary supervision and support if you are going to engage in group counseling online. In terms of the positive outcomes, several studies indicate that online group counseling outcomes are comparable to face-to-face group outcomes. They found that clients' positive perception of the online counseling experience actually increased due to the convenience of participating from the comfort of their own home. Also, there weren't any significant differences that have been found in client outcomes when compared with face-to-face groups, so they're just as effective. So in essence, again, the benefits far outweigh any kind of risks, okay? Or challenges that you may have in performing online group counseling. Preparation for group counseling is important in the online environment. It's a different environment. It's not that you're not sitting next to people. You can't just look across at somebody in the same way and feel that presence. Informed consent is critical to the group counseling process. We know that within the face-to-face process, it's even more so with the online medium. A little extra time and patience is required for online group counseling, okay? The majority of studies have found little difference in outcome between face-to-face and online group counseling. They do recommend, however, that members use the headphones and microphone that I would have mentioned earlier. The counselor takes them through the initial setup and training, so there has to be like orientation phase to engaging in group counseling. Clients have reported feeling safer and more comfortable. They do their homework in between sessions, and this has been found to be effective with once you have received permission from the clients. For those of you who are in training, you can receive permission, including your informed consent, to record the sessions. And this is very helpful for your learning, especially in terms of outlining and seeing the group process actually work through all of the stages that you're very familiar with. Okay, so in that orientation, make sure that you instruct students to use a visual aid to alert attention that they actually want to speak. So they can use the hands up, like some of you've used online, the actual hands up on Zoom or whatever mode you're using, or they can physically use their hands up, or you can tell them to wear a hat. Every time they want to ask a question, they put on a hat. You might do that with younger children, or put, I don't know, something on their head to make it more fun and engaging. Orient students to the online environment. Let them generate a list of ideas regarding their perceptions of benefits and challenges of utilizing online counseling. So what I'm really suggesting here is to actually use the online environment to help that initial forming stage. Don't try to deny it. Let them explore what kind of challenges may be evident, you know, in interacting in this way. So they might say things like, okay, if I speak quietly, people aren't going to hear me because my phone doesn't work well. And, you know, so things like that, and let them kind of really pan it out as to what they should and should not be doing. And also help the students form ground rules, okay? You'll see, I have to move my image of you. You'll see on the side here, I have, you know, just 3 essential ones. Be respectful, be professional, and be polite. I'm not going to go through them now because we are fighting against time, but I will post my slides for you afterwards, okay? Oops. Okay, what have I done? What have I done? Sorry, what have I done? Bear with me. I don't know, where am I? Where am I? I was trying so hard not to, okay, maps don't allow. Okay, here we go. Okay, so in terms of orienting your group members, discuss how the lack of nonverbal communication can impact the group experience. Encourage members to express themselves verbally, okay? Introduce, you know, so you get them to, or encourage them to articulate everything that they're feeling and experiencing within the group. Introduce visual signals, as I mentioned, so they know when they want to share or they want to interrupt a conversation, what they can do. Use verbal encouragers to keep the group moving. Address the issue of missing or subtle nonverbal communication. All those things need to be addressed within the orientation phase of group counseling. And the final objective, which is to look at some of the challenges and ethical considerations. Okay, there are some challenges in providing group counseling online. However, the beneficial factors of group work for students outweighs the challenges. All right, so counselors should avoid a directive leadership style. It's very easy using the online technology to fall into a linear discussion, a kind of question and answer routine, and you have to really work hard against that. Members may also have a hyper awareness of the fact that they're on the or in the online environment, and they may experience often feeling as if the environment was artificial. So you as a counselor and leading the group have to do your best to engage them in such a way to almost help them forget that they are online, okay? And help kind of alleviate that feeling of it being a superficial kind of environment. It may be harder initially for students to trust the group members in this online format. They may feel disconnected from the group counseling experience. And I think also it'll make a difference if this is a group that you were working with in the face-to-face environment and you've now shifted to the online platform. It may be easier because there would have been the interaction and the bonding and so forth would have occurred in the offline. So you'll have a lot of work to do if you're now starting the group online fresh, all right? Discuss confidentiality and safety in online environment, in the online group environment. Explore concerns So concerns that they may have is things like, you know, people can screenshot and use their picture for something else. So that needs to be discussed. Discuss privacy, lack of nonverbal communication, what you'll do if there are time delays and it becomes frustrating because someone's mouth is moving, but you're hearing what they said many minutes later. Explore technological concerns and plans for what you'll do to reconnect should the connection break or dissolve. You need to revisit these topics throughout the group. Not just in the first session, but it needs to come up again and again throughout the group. It helps to reassure the members as they move forward. Especially if you're noticing that they're not engaging in the process in the way that they should be. Now, extra time allows for familiarity with each other and the online environment. So do recognize that you may have to have more than your planned, maybe originally you planned 6 sessions, you may have to include an extra 2 sessions because it will take a little more time and you'll probably be spending a little less time in each individual session than you would in the face-to-face setting. Excuse me, but this extra time helps to facilitate rapport between members by using the uniqueness of the online environment. For example, you can use activities, just to give you an example of a few of them, and I would like to try, well, just one of them quickly, is especially when a group is forming, to get to know people's names, you can do a activity called the speed name game, where everybody calls their names, and as you go around, you have to call the previous people's names and keep moving, and it has to be very quick. Okay, you do that a number of times, and that helps to relax everybody into the environment and feel comfortable. Okay, another one that's good to do is to use improvisation. You can pretend that you have a ball, and you can say, okay, I'm going to throw this ball. Whoever I throw it to and catches it has to tell me how they feel at the moment. You can use it as a check-in tool, how they feel at the moment. Or when you throw the ball to them, the ball can transform into something else that's meaningful to them, and they have to share it. So for instance, I might catch the ball from you and I might say, oh, this ball is my cat and it's comforting, it makes me feel safe, or something like that, okay? But you want to kind of get some interaction going within the group environment and get them to focus on the individuals within the group rather than the setting of the online environment. There's also the This Is Me activity. If you're going to use this activity, it's kind of helpful if you do it, if you give them a message beforehand by email to find something in their house that represents them, that they can talk about. Very often, you know, children might bring, you know, a family photo or, you know, a favorite toy and speak about it. So that also helps to break the ice at the beginning of the group session. Okay, we're nearly there, so bear with me. I'm not going to go on about this too long. I will just skip through this slide, but this speaks to ways in which you can normalize awkward silence that can occur sometimes with the lag time, especially when you're in group counseling and different members are speaking. And so I'll move on from that. Okay, counselors have to work just as hard in groups as they do when they're face-to-face, okay? So they need to enthusiastically link members with similar experiences and stories and address here and now moments within the group setting. So you need to draw members out and verbally reach them through the digital divide. And you have to encourage them. It's a useful skill, and it will come with practice. The more that you use the online format, the more, you know, the easier it will become as you engage with it more. Okay, so you're trying to get away from that linear feel that you experience in the group process online. Well, the group counselor needs to be a leader. You need to be assertive. You need to demonstrate the way in which you want the members to interact, okay? So I think I would have mentioned that it leads to a directive style, okay? And it's very easy to depend on the use of closed-ended questions, because I said to you, it lends to this kind of directive approach. So you have to be very cognizant of that and move on. And finally, what kinds of groups work well online? What the literature is saying is that peer support groups that focus on subject areas like that are related to health and family life education issues, college readiness groups, and mentoring groups in terms of mentoring students for the job interview process or their career search and things like that. So those kind of groups they found have been very effective among the student population with school counselors online. Okay, so in summary, COVID-19, as I said, it's forced us to be where we are today in terms of working within this online realm. I want you to rest assured that the benefits of utilizing the online platforms for school counseling far outweigh the limitations, and we need to continue to engage in the ethical practices that we are familiar with, and some of them may need tweaking a little to be able to adjust to the online platform. The safety of our students has to be at the forefront of everything that we do. So anything that you're questioning or doesn't feel right, speak to your supervisor, speak to your colleagues before you make that decision. And you have to take netiquette considerations into account when you're actually in the online forum, because things that we take for granted in the face-to-face forum become magnified when we're online. And finally, counseling groups online can be effective, okay? And your skill will become honed and with more and more practice. Okay, so that is the end of my presentation. I have the references there, and I will to just remind you all, I'm on the COVID-19 task force. So one of my mandates is that I must remind everybody about the preventative behaviors, the COVID-19 preventative behaviors or precautionary behaviors of, you know, washing your hands, sneezing into your elbow and so forth. And I thought this was a nice slide that captures it all. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now and ask, does anyone have any questions? No questions? I'm going to lower the hands that were up before, because I'm assuming that they were not. No questions at all?
Hi, Donna.
Yes, Donna.
You were going to show us how to blur the background in Zoom.
Yes, okay.
Please go ahead.
Very
Thanks.
good, thank you. All right, so I am going to share my screen in Zooms. I'm sharing my screen. It should, no, that doesn't work. Okay, I thought it would actually share my screen. Okay, so let me take that off at the moment. Okay, if you go to the bottom of your screen, you'll see that in the middle, there should be a green button that says share screen. If you move right across to the left, you come to stop video. Okay, now under stop video, there's a little arrow pointing up. If you click on that, you will see that it says select a camera, and then it says choose virtual background. So if you click on the choose virtual background, someone has gone there already, you will get your virtual background. And if you are on a green wall especially, or you can got some green fabric that you can drape behind, the image of the virtual background looks, well, it looks more real. It doesn't look as fake as when you don't have a green background. Fortunately, I am in a room with a green wall, so I don't know how real this is looking to you, but you see that it blocks out everything. And I think it's a handy tool, a very handy tool to have. And you can change, you know, you can download pictures and put whatever virtual background you want. Yes, I've been playing with it, so you'll see that there are lots of different virtual backgrounds. Okay. Are there any other questions? Thank you, Donna, for reminding me. Any other questions? No? Can I ask a question before we close off? I'm sorry to have kept you a little longer than we planned. Have any of you started the online counseling already? And if so, are you willing to share an experience or two? No? Ooh, you all are very quiet. Okay. Was it too much information in too short a time?
Folks are saying just in classes, and yes. So maybe Asha Bino. And then Donna Cox said the telephone as well. Kim started sessions with the sixth form.
Okay, so that's good. Okay then, well, in the interest of being respectful of everybody's time, as I said, I apologize for going over. We were trying to keep it to an hour, But I would like to thank Dr. Griffin again for joining us today and giving us that wonderful presentation, which really helped to set the
Thank you
context.
for having me.
Thank you, thank you. And I thank you all for joining us. And please take care. Liaise with your local supervisors, and I am available for questions as well. In fact, on the e-learning site, I'm going to put a question and answer box up there. So if you have any questions that come to light as a result of the presentation, we can go further from there. Okay, so thank you very much. And you can give yourselves a clap for lasting so long. Okay, bye-bye. Bye. I'm gonna